Hello, welcome to Saturday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic. Now today we've got a viewer created puzzle for you guys to take a look at. This one has come in from Florian Zellmer. We've done one of Florian's puzzles before, and I'll explain the rules of what we've got on the screen in just a second. Quick bit of admin though. Sandwich Sudoku, our app, the next 5 puzzles should be uploaded and ready for you guys if you want to update the app. And also just to note that we are now catering for double notation. So a lot of you have said you'd like to be able to notate exactly as you can using our web software. So being able to put corner notation and central notation. Well, that's now available in the Sandwich Sudoku app. So we hope you guys enjoy that. News on the Classic Sudoku app, which you may have seen the video that I did a couple of weeks ago. Previewing the fact that that's coming out soon. It is very soon. It's just days away, so that should be out in the next, well, sometime next week on all platforms. So look out for that. We're really proud of it. Now, how does this work? It looks a bit like a sandwich Sudoku, but it's got no digits, and in fact, it's called a frame Sudoku. But this one has a little twist. So in frame Sudoku, the way that normally works is these numbers outside the grid give the total of the 3 digits, the 3 closest digits in that direction. So this 10 would be saying that these 3 yellow squares have to sum up to 10. However, Florian has introduced a variation on this, and he says that these clues, they can refer to the first 2 cells or the first 3 cells. So the sum could be 2 or 3 cells long, and we aren't told which. And that's all I know. Now, I've not done, I'm not sure, I was about to say many frame Sudokus, I'm not even sure I've done any, but I'm going to try this one for you. And if you want to have a go, just click on the link under the video, and that should take you to exactly what you're seeing on the screen, and you can play along. Now, let's go. Now, as I was typing this into the software, what I thought I was going to do to start was to do a bit of a sandwich Sudoku technique, and I'm going to highlight where I can disambiguate how long these sums are. So let's have a look. 19, for example, that can't possibly be just 2 cells. That must be 3 cells. So I'm going to label green cells that are used in the sum. So let's just scan. 5 can only be 2 cells. We can't make 5 in 3 cells. 1 plus 2 plus 3 equals 6, as every schoolboy knows. 18, obviously that can't be 2 cells. 6 can be 2 or 3. There's a 23. That's going to be where we should start. Look, that's got to be 6, 8, 9. And I'll label them green just to stay consistent. 19 there. And 18 here. They must all be green. 19 there. Okay, so that looks like as far as we can go. Now, let me think about this now. Right, got something. This 6 clue. Now, let's imagine this 6 clue was 3 cells. Then it's going to be 1, 2, and 3, as I mentioned down there. But if it's 1, 2, and 3, there is simply no way of making this 8 total work. 8 in 3 cells would have to use a 1, and 8 in 2 cells would have to use a 1, 2, or a 3. So this 6 clue must be just 2 cells. Now we can do the sort of reverse logic. If this 8 is 3 cells, it would have to either be 1, 2, and 5, which makes this 6 unfillable, or 1, 3, and 4, which makes the 6 unfillable, because the 6 in 2 cells must be 1, 5, or 2, 4. So the 8 is 2 cells as well. Now that means we can now work out the value of these 2 cells, look, because we know that the box will add up to 45. So we've got 23 plus 14, that's 37. These have got to add up to 8. Okay. But we know that we can never put a 2 in either of these 8 totals, because if we did, the other number would be a 6, and we've already got a 6 in the block. So this 6 is in fact 2, 4. And I guess I'll label this, shall I? This must be 1, 3, 3, 5 or 1, 7. The same is true obviously for these 2 cells here. Okay. So we're off and running, but I'm not quite sure. Where are we meant to go next? 19. So 19 and 6 is 25. So these cells sum to 20. Well, that doesn't seem to be terribly restricted. I wonder if there's 34. 13, 19 and 10, that's 42. So if these were both 2, these would have to add up to 3, which is still possible because I could just make them 1 and 2. That's a bit annoying. And then that would obviously put a 3 into that square, that's still working as well. So, okay, so that doesn't look too hopeful. 19. Let's just check this. So we've got 18 plus 17. So 5 is missing in this box. But again, it could be 2 cells or just 1 cell. So that doesn't seem too hopeful either. This 6 down here, for the same reason again, I can't make this a 3 cell 6, because if I do, it'll be 1, 2 and 3, and that will make this 8 here unfillable. So this is a 2 cell 6. And it can't be 1, 5, because if it's 1, 5, 1, 7 is ruled out, and 3, 5 is ruled out. Good lord, this is complicated. Okay, so now this is 2, 4. And 9, 5. What next? Goodness. 2, 4, 2. Feel like I need to use this 2, 4 somehow. Now hang on. Maybe I have to use the whole of the column here. So I've got 8 here plus 6 is 14. So if this was a 3 cell 13, that would be 27, and these 2 cells would have to sum up to 18, which is impossible. So this is a 2 cell 13. Goodness me. So now I've got 13 plus 19 is 32s, and this is either a 2 cell or a 3 cell 10. If it's a 3 cell 10, this has to be a 3. I think that's possible. If it's a 2 cell 10, this has to be 1, and this would have to be a 1. So this is either a 1 or a 3, I think. Maybe I should just check that logic again. So let's just go through that again. 32 plus 10 is always going to be 42. It's just whether this is part of a 1-2 pair, and if it is, because of the 2 down here, the 2 would be here and this would be a 1. So this is a 1 or a 3. And I guess from the logic we looked at before, we've got 13 plus 8 plus 6 is 27. So these 3 cells here have got to sum to 18. So if this is a 1, this has to be an 8 or a 9. And if this is a 3, this has lots of options. This could be 9, 7 or 6. Okay, well, that doesn't seem too good, does it? So I've clearly got to do some more thinking. Now this is 18 here. Ah, this is interesting. This is interesting. Hang on, there's something more we can do with this block. Let's think about this. Let's use these clues though, rather than these clues. So 18, if this is a 3-cell 6, that's 24. These 3 cells have to sum up to 21. But I can make those 2 add up to 10. That's still got to be too big, because that cell would have to be 11. So this is a 2-cell 6. Wow, this is really good. So that's a 2-cell 6. So we've now got 24 here. So again, this must be a 2. So I'm going to actually change the labeling here. All of those squares are forced to be, so this has to be a 2-cell 10, a 3-cell 18, and a 2-cell 6. Now that adds up to 34, which means these 2 sum up to 11, and that means that's a 3. And that's an 8. And now we can see this is a 13 total. So I think that makes that a 2, does it? Or oh no, hang on. This could be a 2 or a 5. Because it could be a 2-cell. I can't remember whether I worked. Oh, didn't I work out this had to be a 2-cell 13? I did work out it had to be a 2-cell 13, so that's a 5. Because I've changed the colouring, that's confused me for a moment. Now, this 6 in 2 cells with the 5 there must be 2, 4. Now that's surprising, because we've now got, I suppose deadly patterns in this can get resolved by the sums though, so I shouldn't be too alarmed about that. You can see this square can't be a 2, because that would make that have to be 8, 9. So that's 4, that's 2. These 2 have to add up to 15 without using 8. So that's 6 and 9. That makes that square an 8. These 2 squares must be 1 and 7. Which means that's not 1 and 7. Which means, now that's good. Because that means this is a 3-5 pair. Which means that this is a 1-7 pair. Which I could have got anyway because I got the 3-5 there. But c'est la vie. Now this must be a 6 or a 9 to complete the column. And can we go any further? Yes, this 8 is interesting now, because if this 8 is 3 cells, it would either have to use a 3 or a 5. And we've got a 3 and a 5 already there, so this is a 2-cell 8. And that's cool because it can't be 1-7 and it can't be 3-5, so this is 2-6. I think this 19 is going to be seriously restricted now. It can't use a 2, 4 or a 6. Obviously it can't contain a 1. So it could... Three, 7, 9, that looks possible. Or 5... No, it can never have a 5 in it, can it? Because if it has a 5 in it, it would then have to have a repeat 5 for another 5, 9 or a 6, 8, so that's not right. So I think this always has to be 3, 7, 9, which I'm slightly surprised about, but let's put it in. That means that's a 1. Now we can fill in the value of these squares. This must be 5, 6 and 8 in some order, just to complete the row, obviously. Now, can we do anything here? This 9 now, what are the options? If this is a 3 square 9, it would need to use a 2 or a 3. Yeah, so it's not. It's a 2 cell 9. Therefore, these two cells have to sum up to 19 plus 8 plus 9 is 36. These two have to sum up to 9 as well. Let's just highlight that like that. So, okay. So we've got 1, 8 and 4, 5 to put in. This 8 forces that to be an 8, therefore that's a 1, and this is 4, 5. Right. Therefore these squares are 2, 3 and 7. And these squares are 1, 4 and 9. Okay. So, can we do anything down here? 7, 9. We can use this 18 now. This can't be a 1. That must be a 7. That must be a 1. So that must be a 6 and that must be a 9. That's all working. Sorry, I should have spotted that before. Now this 7 can't be 3 cells because there's a 1 in the row. So it must be 2 cells. Let's use green. So this is either 2, 5 or 3, 4. 13, 26, 37. Just a second, let me just have a stare at this for a minute. Hopefully I'll spot something. 6, this could still be a 3 celler here. That would make that a 5. That's all possible. Where am I meant to be looking? If this is... So here we've got 8 plus 6 plus 17, that's 31. Which means I would have to put 14 into the extremities here. So it must be at least one of these clues, no, at least 2 of these clues must be 2 cells. But the thing is, it could be any of them still. I don't see a way of resolving that. Even, I mean, that could still be 1, 5. That's perfectly possible. If we look at it the other way, we've got 16 plus 15 plus 10. So that's equal to 41. So again, that means that there's either 1 or 2 of these cells is a 3 cell or a 2 cell clue. It's still possible for there to be 2 2-cell clues. Bother. Okay, so what am I meant to look at then? 17 in 3 cells with a 5, 6 and a 7 here. Now that strikes me as unlikely to be possible. Couldn't have a 9 in there. If you have an 8 in there, no, it doesn't work. Ah, that's interesting, isn't it? So I think this 17 has to be 2 cells, which means it has to be 8, 9. So here we've got a 2-cell 7 and a 2-cell 17. So that's 24. And then this one, which is either 2 cells or 3 cells. So if this was 3 cells, 24. 24, 38. This would have to be 7. And that would make that a 6. Again, that's still a possible though, isn't it? Bother. But this, of course, in fact, that is forced. I'm being slow. I can't make this two cells, because if I make it 2 cells, I've got to use an 8 or a 9 in the sum. So this is 3 cells. Oh, wow. Which means this does add to 7, which means this is a 6. So these two add up to 8. Yeah, that works still. There's just got the option of 1, 7 now. And we've got 2, 5 and 3, 4 into these cells. I don't quite know how they're arranged. 2, 5, 3, 4. Maybe we can do something with the totals though. Let's have a look. Well, actually this one can't be 5 ever, so that one can't be 2 ever. So this actually we have to now delete all these green cells, and think about these 11. So we've got 13 plus 13 is 26. 26 plus 11 is 37. So I need there to be 8 outside the sum here. So these two have to both be outside the sum. That's really nice, isn't it? So now this 11 can't include 4 and 5 into this square, which means this can't be 2 or 3. So this is a 2 seller, this is a 2 seller. And again, I feel I'm being monstrously slow here. Sorry about this. What am I missing? So now there must be an 8 and a 9 in these 3 cells here. And here we've got 19 plus 18, that's 37. That's interesting, isn't it? So if there is an 8 and a 9 in those 3 squares, therefore the 8 must be on its own, because I'm not going to be able to make 2 cells equal 8. So if the 8 is on its own, exactly one, we know this one is a 3 cell clue, exactly one of these 2 clues is also a 3 cell clue. Now if it was the 8, this square would have to be a 5. In fact, actually look, there's a 5, we can actually fill those in. I haven't spotted that. It's 5, 8, 9. That would have to be 5. That would have to be 1. That would have to be 2. That would be possible. Bother. If on the other hand this was a 3 cell clue, this would have to be a 5. These 2 squares would have to add up to 5, which is interesting, is it? 2, 3. Golly. 6, 19. It's still possible. Okay. So if this 10 was a 2 cell clue, it would have to be 3, 7 now, looking at the contents of the column. So we'd have 13 plus 9. Yeah, this might get us somewhere. 13 plus 9 is 22, plus 10 is 32. That means these, yeah, okay. So we can't have a 3 cell 10, because if we have a 3 cell 10, this square has to be too big. Let's just do that again. 10 plus 13 is 23, plus 9 is 32. So I need something to equal 13. Well, this square can't equal 13 on its own, so this is a 2 cell 10, which means this is 3, 7. Goodness me. That means that's a 9. Okay, so this must be a 4 to make the 13, and therefore this square, well, this, in fact, these two squares can't be 3 and 4. Therefore, these two squares are 3 and 4, and these two squares are 2 and 5, which must be that way round. Wow! Sorry if I'm not doing this as efficiently as you guys are. Maybe it's my lack of experience with these puzzles, but this is, I mean, it strikes me as a brilliant puzzle, but it really complicated. Now that must be a 9 now, using this square. This must be an 8. Now in these squares we must be 2, 6 and 7. And these squares must be 1, 3 and 4. Well, we can never have a 1 in this square, look. And we can never have a 2 there if this has to be a 3 or a 4. And this can't be a 5, or this 19 thing can't ever work. So if that's a 6, it has to go 6, 4, 9. If this is a 7, that could go either way. That could be 3, 9 or 4, 8 then. Bother. Okay. And there still could be a 2, because it could go 2, 1, 5. Ah! Okay, alright, well let's carry on. Let's have a look back down here then. So now we've got 16 plus 15 plus 10. That's 41. Therefore, they've got to be outies totaling 4 in these 3 squares. And we've got this one, look. That's equal to 4. Now, the only other way of making 4 would be to have 2 outies. They'd have to be 1 and 3. And there's a 3 in the block already. So this, in fact, is the outie. These squares are 3-cell sums. Okay. But I don't know if that's actually that helpful. Maybe, well, it might be a little bit helpful, because we're going to be able to disambiguate this 2 and this 6, aren't we? Because we've got 16 plus 11, that's 27. 27 plus 12, that's got to be a 6. That's got to be a 2. Therefore, these squares are 1, 6 and 8. And these squares should be 2, 5 and 9. And that looks right, because everything seems to be adding up to the right number. This square can never be a 9 because of the 8 total. This square can never be a 9 because of the 6 total. That gives us the 9. This can never be 8. Oh, no, it can't be 8 for the same reason. Why did it do that? So, actually, it's interesting now, this, because there's no 3 in here. This must be a 2-cell total. Therefore, this must be 6 and 2. Therefore, that's a 5. That must be a 1. This must be an 8. And we don't know the order of the 3 and the 7 yet. But this 6 points at that square, so that resolves, oops, that resolves those. That 2 resolves those. This must be a 2-cell 9. Oops. Because obviously it can't be a 3-cell with the 9 there. 9 plus 13 is 22. 22 plus 8 is 30. So they're out. Ah, that's interesting. These add up to 30. And those squares add up to 15. So these are all 2-cell totals. I'm going to delete that one therefore and put the green squares in here so that that's more helpful to remind me. I have a 5 here and a 9, so this must be 6 and 7, which must be this way round. Now this 8 must be 3 and 5. And oh, okay. And again we have a deadly pattern here, which will presumably get resolved by, well, we can resolve it immediately. There's no way this square can be a 5 because that will break the 10 total. 3 and 5, so that's nice. This is resolving itself over here now. This must be 8 and 1. Okay. That means the 5 and the 3 get unwound. We've still done nothing in these central columns. 3, 5 and 7 along here. 2, 4, 8, 9 along here. I might as well just put the numbers in, given that we're so close to. And this must be 1, 2, 4 and 6. Now, what can we do next? Presumably, I need outies totaling 5 here. Now you can, if we look along here, we've already got a 1 and a 2 in the row. So in fact, the 5 is going to sit on its own. It can't be a 2-cell outie. Therefore, that's a 5, because that is an outie, and it's the only. We know it's the only outie. This must be 3 cells. This 5 will presumably resolve some things above us, so let's just have a look at that. That cell can never be a 4. We can never make the 8 work. Maybe I should have worked harder on this these totals up here, actually. This 10 must be 2 cells. Yeah, okay, and therefore that must be an 8. Because if we look at this, the outies, if I remember rightly, we calculated had to total 8 here. That means we have to total 8 from these 3 squares. Now, we can't make 2 of these squares add to 8, so there is an 8 on its own. Now, this 10 must be 2 cells, because if it's 3 cells, it breaks. So this is a 2-cell 10, and this is an 8 as the only outie. Therefore, we get some more numbers in the grid. That means that's a 5. This could still be 2 or 3 cells. In fact, we know it's 3 cells because the outie's totaling 8, so that's 1, 2 now. God, I think if I did more of these, I'd get quicker at them. I definitely feel like I'm starting to make progress a little bit faster now than I was at the beginning, although it still feels painfully slow. This isn't 2, this isn't a 1. Obviously these seem to be, both ways round seem to work here. Ah, both ways round work there. Another of these sort of patterns here that both, so presumably that's going to have to get resolved by what's going on at the bottom of the grid. It's weird, this. Okay, so how can we make this work? There's no 3 here, so this must be 1, 4, which must be, I think that that's got to be that way round. 4, 2 like that. Get rid of the 1 and the 4 there, so this is 2, 6. So if this is, oh goodness, this still works. 2. If this is 2, this has to be 9, this has to be 7. If this is 6, these 2 squares have to sum to 12, which means this is always 9. Well, that's a 4, look. Oh, that 2 resolves the 2 and the 6 there, in fact. So that's a 3 and that's a 7. That's a 6, that's a 7. Therefore, that's a 3 and that's a 4. Wow, okay. Now the 6 and the 8 are resolved. The 2 must go here. That must be a 7. That must be a 3. Now that should be a 9 and that should be a 1. So that's what I think I would submit. Yes. Wow, that is a long video. I'm not sure whether I butchered that. I found it very difficult. I'm going to be fascinated to know from you guys whether or not I'm just slow at this variation, having never done it before. Thanks for watching, and thanks very much, Florian, for sending us that. That was a real workout, and we'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.